has never been anything quite like Gamal Abdel Nasser in the history of the Arab world. He was not a king. He was not a caliph. He was not born to power, did not inherit it, did not buy it. He was the son of a postal worker from Upper Egypt who looked at the most powerful empires on earth and decided, with extraordinary clarity, that he was going to make them leave. And for a moment, a brief, electric, world-changing moment, he did. This is not a story about a hero. This is a story about a man who held the entire Arab world in his hands, and the forces, foreign and domestic, that worked tirelessly to make him drop it. 3 wars, 1 canal, a revolution betrayed, a dream deferred, and a death at 52 that made 100 million people weep in the streets. This is the story of Gamal Abdel Nasser, the pharaoh who refused to bow. January 15th, 1918. Gamal Abdel Nasser, Hussein, is born in Alexandria to a family of modest means from the village of Beni Mor in Upper Egypt. His father, Abdel Hussein Nasser, is a postal worker, educated enough, mobile enough, present enough to watch the country he lives in be administered by people who were not Egyptian. Egypt, in 1918, is nominally independent. In practice, it is a British protectorate. The British military has occupied Egypt since 1882. The Suez Canal, built on Egyptian land with Egyptian labor, is controlled by a Franco-British company. The Egyptian economy runs for the benefit of foreign bondholders, British cotton merchants, and a Khedival ruling class that exists at the pleasure of London. The Egyptians call it al-ihtilal, the occupation. They have been saying that word for 36 years. They will keep saying it for 30 more. Nasser grows up restless and politically awake from an early age that most children would spend playing. His mother dies when he is 8 years old, a wound he will carry quietly his entire life. He is sent between relatives, between schools, between cities. Instability as education. At school in Cairo, he reads. He reads Egyptian history, Pharaonic, Islamic, Ottoman. He reads about Napoleon's occupation, about the British, about the 1919 revolution, when Egyptians rose up against the British and were crushed, and their leader Saad Zaghloul was exiled to Malta, and the British stayed anyway. He reads about the humiliation of a proud, ancient, enormous civilization, reduced to a footnote in someone else's empire. He is a teenager when he decides this ends with his generation. He does not know yet how. He only knows that it will. He joins student demonstrations against the British. He is hit in the head by police during a protest, hospitalized briefly. The scar, physical and political, stays with him. He applies to the Royal Military Academy, twice rejected, finally accepted in 1937. The military is not a career choice for Nasser. It is a plan. He has already decided, with the cold precision of a man far older than his years, that the only institution capable of ending the British occupation is the Egyptian army. And to use the army, he will need to be inside it, deep inside it, trusted, senior, in command. Nasser does not build a revolution loudly. He builds it the way a patient man builds anything, methodically, quietly, with an architect's attention to structural integrity. Through the late 1930s and 1940s, he recruits, one officer at a time, men he has studied, tested, trusted. Anwar Sadat, Abdel Hakim Amer, Zakaria Mohieddin. each brought in slowly, vetted carefully, sworn to secrecy. He calls them the free officers. Their goal, the removal of the British, the overthrow of the corrupt monarchy of King Farouk, and the return of Egypt to Egyptians. There is a war, and the war changes everything. In May 1948, the Arab armies, Egyptian, Jordanian, Syrian, Iraqi, invade the newly declared state of Israel. The Arab League promises liberation. The generals promise victory. The politicians promise that the Arab world will correct the injustice of the Nakba, the catastrophe of Palestinian displacement. Instead, the Arab armies are humiliated. The Egyptian army fights and finds itself betrayed not by the Israelis, but by its own government. Corrupt officials have sold the army defective weapons, ammunition that misfires, artillery shells filled with sand instead of explosive, soldiers dying not in battle, but because the men they trusted to arm them stole the money and sent them to war with props. Nasser fights in the Battle of Fallujah, surrounded, outgunned, holding a position for months in a war the politicians have already lost. He survives. Many of his men do not. He does not return from Palestine angry at Israel. He returns from Palestine furious at Egypt, at the regime, the corruption, the monarchy that sent young men to die with weapons that didn't work so that ministers could pocket the difference. The free officers accelerate. 1948 has given them not just motivation, but a moral case that every Egyptian officer can understand. The regime is not just incompetent, it is criminal. July 23, 1952. In the early hours of the morning, the free officers move. It is surgically clean. No mass violence. No street fighting. Government installations are seized before anyone realizes what is happening. By morning, the free officers control Cairo. By the 26th, King Farouk is on a ship sailing into exile, weeping, reportedly, as Egypt's coastline disappears behind him. The man placed publicly at the head of the new regime is General Mohammed Naguib, older, decorated, respectable. A face to calm the public while the real architects consolidate power. The real architect is Nasser. He is 34 years old. Nobody outside Egypt has heard of him yet. Within 2 years, Naguib is under house arrest. Nasser is prime minister, then president. He has not fired a shot in the revolution, but he has outmaneuvered, outthought, and outlasted every rival. He didn't just take power, he engineered its transfer so completely that the men who thought they shared it didn't realize it was gone until the door was locked behind them. Nasser, as president, moves on 2 tracks simultaneously. Domestically, land reform, breaking up the vast estates of the old Egyptian aristocracy and redistributing them to the fellahin who had worked the land for generations. Industrialization, education expansion, the nationalization of Egyptian businesses and infrastructure, the creation of something that had never properly existed, an Egyptian middle class with a stake in its own country. And at the center of everything, the Aswan High Dam, the project that will harness the Nile, end the ancient cycle of flood and drought, and power Egypt's industrial future. He needs financing. He turns to the Americans and the World Bank. Negotiations proceed. Then, in July 1956, the United States withdraws its offer, citing Egypt's increasing arms purchases from the Soviet bloc and Nasser's refusal to join Western Cold War alliances. It is meant to humiliate him, to show Egypt's president that without Western money, he is nothing. July 26, 1956. In a speech of extraordinary theater and precision, Nasser announces the nationalization of the Suez Canal Company. Egypt is taking back its canal. The reaction in London and Paris is volcanic. British Prime Minister Anthony Eden compares Nasser to Hitler, a comparison so historically illiterate it tells you more about Eden's panic than Nasser's actions. The French are furious. The Israelis, who have their own security concerns about Egyptian military buildup and the blockade of the Straits of Tiran, see an opportunity. The three powers meet in secret at a villa in Sèvres, France. They make a plan. Israel will invade the Sinai. Britain and France will issue an ultimatum demanding both sides withdraw, knowing Egypt will refuse. Britain and France will then intervene to protect the canal and in the process destroy Nasser. They call it Operation Musketeer. In Cairo, they will call it something else. Three of the most powerful nations on earth sat around a table and conspired to remove the elected leader of a country that had done nothing to them except take back what was its own. If that is not a crime, the word has no meaning. By any conventional military measure, Egypt loses the Suez War. The Israeli army advances rapidly through the Sinai, reaching the canal within days. Egyptian forces are overwhelmed and outmaneuvered. British and French paratroopers land at Port Said. Egyptian soldiers fight in the streets. The Battle of Port Said is bloody and furious, but the military outcome is not in doubt. Nasser orders the canal blocked, ships scuttled in the waterway, denying the invaders the prize they came for. But the military position is desperate. And then the world intervenes. From directions that nobody in London, Paris, or Tel Aviv had fully anticipated. The United States, furious at being excluded from the plan, alarmed at the optics of Western empires attacking an Arab nation during the Cold War, and watching Soviet threats to intervene on Egypt's behalf, calls the operation off. President Eisenhower tells Eden, in no uncertain terms, "Stop." The pressure on the British pound is engineered to make the message clear: financial warfare conducted by an ally against an ally. The Soviet Union issues thinly veiled threats of rocket attacks on London and Paris. The United Nations condemns the invasion. Britain and France, humiliated, abandoned, exposed, withdraw. Israel eventually withdraws from the Sinai under American pressure. Nasser has lost his air force. He has lost ground. His canal is blocked. His army has retreated. And he has won. Completely. Permanently. Because the world has watched three colonial powers conspire to destroy him, and he is still standing. That image is worth more than any military victory. The canal stays Egyptian. The British and French leave. Eden resigns in disgrace. Nasser emerges not just as Egypt's leader, but as the symbolic leader of every colonized people who has ever watched the great powers make plans at their expense. His voice, already carried by the new transistor radio across the Arab world, now reaches everywhere. He speaks, and the Arab street erupts. He announces, and governments in Baghdad, Damascus, Amman, Beirut tremble, because their populations want what Egypt has, a leader who tells the empires, no. By 1958, Nasser has become something almost without precedent, a living symbol. To the Arab masses from Morocco to Iraq, he represents a possible future in which the Arab world, fractured by colonialism, divided by borders drawn by Sykes and Picot in 1916, ruled by kings and strongmen serving foreign interests, might reconstitute itself as a single, powerful, self-determining civilization. Pan-Arabism is not Nasser's invention, but it is his fuel and his most intoxicating product. In February 1958, Egypt and Syria merged to form the United Arab Republic. Nasser is president of both. It is the first concrete step toward the dream. It lasts 3 years. The union collapses in 1961 when Syrian military officers, resentful of Egyptian dominance, frustrated by Nasser's centralism, and unwilling to subordinate Damascus to Cairo, stage a coup and withdraw Syria. Nasser, devastated, does not invade to force them back. He accepts the failure. The first lesson of Nasser's story is also the harshest. A dream held by one man, however powerful, cannot survive contact with the ambitions of 50 different ruling classes who each want the dream, but want to be in charge of it. The failure of the UAR does not stop Nasser's voice. His speeches on Radio Cairo, Voice of the Arabs, continue to reach the Arab world. He supports liberation movements across Africa and the Middle East. He hosts heads of state, leads the non-aligned movement alongside Nehru and Tito, positions Egypt as the conscience of the decolonizing world. But at home, a darker reality grows alongside the dream. The Mukhabarat, Egypt's intelligence services, expand. Political opposition is crushed. Communists, Muslim Brotherhood members, liberals, all find themselves in the same prison. The republic that replaced the king begins to resemble, in its methods, if not its goals, the thing it replaced. (1967). Gamal Abdel Nasser is 49 years old. He has been in power for 13 years, and he is walking toward the worst decision of his life. The lead-up to the Six-Day War is a masterclass in how great powers, regional rivalries, miscommunication, and domestic political pressure can combine to produce catastrophes that nobody, not even the participants, fully wanted. It begins with false intelligence. In May 1967, the Soviet Union passes information to Nasser claiming that Israel is massing troops on the Syrian border in preparation for a massive attack. The intelligence is fabricated, possibly Soviet disinformation, possibly a miscommunication. But Nasser believes it. He mobilizes Egyptian forces into the Sinai. Hundreds of thousands of troops, tank divisions, artillery, the largest Egyptian military deployment since 1956. Then he does something that crosses a line he cannot uncross. He demands the withdrawal of the UN emergency force, the peacekeeping troops that have been stationed in the Sinai since 1957, after Suez. The UN Secretary General complies with unexpected speed. The buffer is gone. Then Nasser announces the closure of the Straits of Tiran to Israeli shipping, the same blockade that helped trigger the 1956 war. For Israel, this is a red line. They have said so, repeatedly, explicitly, for years. Every step Nasser takes in May 1967 is designed to look strong to the Arab world. Every step makes war more inevitable. He is playing to the crowd, and the crowd is about to watch him fall. June 5th, 1967. At 7:45 in the morning, the Israeli Air Force launches Operation Focus. In less than 3 hours, the Egyptian Air Force is destroyed. On the ground, at breakfast, Most of the planes never get airborne. 300 Egyptian aircraft obliterated before the army has had time to understand what is happening. The Jordanian Air Force, the Syrian Air Force, also destroyed that morning. Without air cover, the Egyptian army in the Sinai is exposed. Israeli armored columns advance with devastating speed. Egyptian commanders, some receiving contradictory orders, some receiving no orders, find themselves surrounded, cut off, outmaneuvered. Nasser receives a phone call from King Hussein of Jordan on the first morning. He tells the king that Egypt's air force is performing well, is inflicting heavy losses. It is a lie, whether from genuine confusion about the scale of the disaster or deliberate deception is still debated. By June 10th, 6 days later, it is over. Israel holds the Sinai Peninsula, Gaza, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, the Golan Heights. Egyptian losses: 10,000 to 15,000 soldiers dead, thousands more taken prisoner. The entire Sinai, Egyptian territory, in Israeli hands. The Arab world does not absorb the scale of the defeat for several days. State radio in Egypt, Syria, and Jordan initially broadcasts reports of Arab victories. When the truth becomes undeniable, the silence that replaces those broadcasts is more devastating than any announcement. On June 9th, Nasser appears on Egyptian television and resigns. What happens next is one of the most extraordinary scenes in modern political history. The people refuse. Millions of Egyptians, not organized, not staged, not ordered, pour into the streets of Cairo, Alexandria, every city in Egypt. They are weeping, they are begging, they are screaming his name. Not in celebration, in grief, in terror of losing the one man who had made them feel, however briefly, however expensively, that Egypt was theirs. Nasser withdraws his resignation. He had just presided over the worst military defeat in modern Arab history, and the people who suffered it most would not let him go. That is either the deepest testament to his hold on the Arab imagination, or the deepest indictment of what the Arab world had allowed itself to need. The years between the Six-Day War and Nasser's death are years of grinding, painful rebuilding. He accepts Soviet military support on a scale that effectively gives Moscow significant influence over Egyptian defense decisions. A humiliation he swallows because he has no choice. Soviet advisors flood into Egypt. Soviet surface-to-air missiles are installed along the canal. Soviet pilots fly patrols over Egyptian airspace. The man who had made his name resisting foreign control of Egypt is now, of military necessity, deeply enmeshed with a foreign power. The war of attrition, a grinding, punishing artillery and air battle along the Suez Canal, grinds on from 1967 to 1970. Egyptian soldiers die daily. Israeli soldiers die daily. The canal is closed. The cities of Port Said, Ismailia, and Suez are shelled repeatedly, their populations evacuated inland. Nasser rebuilds the Egyptian military, with Soviet equipment, Soviet training, Soviet advisors. He knows that eventually there will have to be another war, because without recovering the Sinai, Egypt cannot regain the dignity that June 1967 stripped away. He will not live to fight it. That war will be fought by his successor. The Six-Day War does not just destroy Egyptian prestige. It shatters Pan-Arabism as a functioning political project. If the combined Arab armies, led by the most powerful Arab leader in a generation, armed by the Soviets, motivated by 40 years of accumulated grievance, could not hold the Sinai for 6 days, then what did Arab unity actually mean? What was the dream worth? Into the space that Pan-Arabism vacates, two forces will rush: political Islam and the isolated nationalisms of individual Arab states. Both are, in different ways, heirs to the failure of 1967. Neither is what Nasser intended. The Six-Day War does not just cost Nasser the Sinai. It costs the Arab world a story it had told itself for 20 years. And a people without their story is a people searching for a new one, not always in safe directions. September 28, 1970. Gamal Abdel Nasser dies of a heart attack. He is 52 years old. What follows is unlike anything the modern world has seen. 5 million people, 5 million, follow his funeral procession through the streets of Cairo. The crowd is so vast, so uncontrollable, that the coffin is nearly lost. People climb buildings, lampposts, anything to see. Women tear their clothes in grief. Men weep openly in the street, without shame, without self-consciousness, because there is no self-consciousness large enough to contain what they are feeling. Heads of state fly in from across the world, leaders who hated him and leaders who loved him, all present, because his death is an event of global significance. In cities across the Arab world, Baghdad, Damascus, Beirut, Tripoli, Khartoum, the streets fill with mourners. People who have never met him, will never meet him, grieve as though they have lost a member of their own family. Because in a way, they have. He was the idea that their lives could be different, that the colonial century had an end, that an Arab could stand at a microphone and make the empires listen. When he died, they weren't mourning a man, they were mourning a possibility. The accounting of Nasser is not simple. It never was. On one side, land reform that genuinely redistributed wealth, mass education, the nationalization of the Suez Canal, still Egyptian today. The high dam at Aswan, still generating a quarter of Egypt's electricity. The humiliation of Britain and France at Suez, a psychological turning point for the entire decolonizing world. The non-aligned movement, an Egyptian middle class that had not existed before him. On the other, a police state with no tolerance for dissent. Thousands of political prisoners, including people whose only crime was having a different idea of Egypt's future. The Muslim Brotherhood tortured and hanged. Communists jailed alongside them. A security apparatus that outlasted Nasser by decades and metastasized under his successors. The Six-Day War, 15,000 Egyptian dead. The Sinai lost for 6 years. The Palestinian cause set back by the very leader who had made it his banner. The UAR failed. Pan-Arabism fractured. Yemen, where Nasser intervened in a civil war and lost tens of thousands of Egyptian soldiers in a conflict that dragged on for years. His Vietnam. His successor, Anwar Sadat, will make peace with Israel. The peace Nasser spent his life refusing. Will open Egypt to Western capital. The opening Nasser spent his life resisting. Will undo, piece by piece, much of what Nasser built. Sadat will be assassinated in 1981 by men who learned their politics in the prisons where Nasser put their predecessors. And Egypt, today, authoritarian, economically strained, the Arab Spring's most dramatic and most crushed revolt, is still living inside the architecture that Nasser built. The military state, the security apparatus, the centralism, the same institutions, different hands. Gamal Abdel Nasser was not a democrat. He was not a saint. He was not the uncomplicated hero that 5 million weeping Cairenes wanted him to be on the day they buried him. He was a man from a postal worker's family in Upper Egypt who looked at the most powerful empire the world had ever seen and made it leave his country. He was a man who held the dream of Arab unity in his hands and could not make the dream survive the weight of reality. He was a man who won Suez and lost Sinai, who freed the canal and filled the prisons, who gave Egypt a story it is still telling and a trauma it is still recovering from. He was never meant to rule. He ruled anyway, and the Arab world has spent the 50 years since his death trying to figure out what to do with the space he left behind.